well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's spotlight with Adventurous Academy. Adventurous Academy is a special free school in Bristol, which opened up in 2016. For those of you who haven't met before, my name is Alex Osborne, and I'm an Impact and Implementation Manager here at New Schools Network. You will have seen that we are recording the session. If that's a problem for anybody, or if you do object, please do let me know with a private message. Today, we're really happy to be joined by Trystan Williams from Adventurous Academy, and I will hand over him to introduce himself and the school properly in a moment. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Trystan will shortly be delivering a presentation to tell us a little bit more about Adventurous Academy and how the school realises its mission statement, where everything is possible. There will be time for questions throughout and at the end. Now, if you're like me and you need to write down your questions in order to remember them, please do feel free to post them in the chat and we'll pick these up at the end. If there's anything that you would like to ask and don't want to do so directly, please do feel free to message that. I'm going to ask you to keep your cameras and mics muted during the presentation while Trystan is speaking, but please do feel free to turn these on when it comes to the Q&A session. We'll be sharing attendance data with the Department for Education, just letting them know who is here today. If you'd rather we didn't do that again, please just send me a quick message. We'll be also running a poll at the end of the session. I will remind you as we come towards the end, just for a little bit of feedback. So please do stick around to complete this if you're able. And if not, we will also send a request for feedback by email as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Trystan to begin today's session.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Alex. And I just hope you're all going to enjoy the session. I suppose I'm going to share with you the journey that we've been on as a school since we opened in 2016. But also, please feel free, open to ask questions as we go, because it'll give me a breather for me to readjust my thought processes as well. So I do have a PowerPoint to share with you, and I'm more than happy, Alex, for the information to be shared with anybody as well. And I'm also more than happy for you to share my email address as well. So if anybody wants to make any follow-up calls, I'm more than happy for that to happen. Because I just find these processes where we have an opportunity to talk and meet people that we don't know, I think it's always a good point to have reflective conversations after the session has finished. So I'm Trystan Williams, and I am the principal of Adventurous Academy. I'm also fortunate enough to have the executive responsibility over 6 primaries within the school, within the trust, and all our schools are based in Bristol. So we've our statement motto in the trust is to work hard, be kind, and what we really mean by that is that we feel that by working hard we can transform the outcomes for our young people, and we also feel that being kind is a good human value to have. So a lot of our conversations and ongoing professional conversations are used around that concept of working hard and being kind, and that is the umbrella trust approach. And then within Adventurous Academy, which is a specialist provision for children on the autism spectrum, we've come up with where everything is possible, and we co-constructed that with our children, young people, with our families, and with our staff members prior to opening. And it is something that we do revisit on an annual basis, because I think it's very important that we do have the mantra that, no matter what background our children are from, doesn't matter what complexities they have, that all our staff members need to have the mentality that children can succeed, we can transform outcomes through appropriate education, and we do have a mindset that actually everything really, really is possible. So first slide. So our mission, our vision, apologies, make sure I get the here we go. So our vision, our mission statement is where everything's possible, as Alex said. So all students at Adventurous Academy have an education and healthcare plan with a primary diagnosis of ASC, autism spectrum condition. They all have speech and language needs in line with the diagnosis of their autism. And the needs of our students, including their barriers to learning, starting points and context on arrival, as well as student and parent feedback, including their own experiences, shapes our design for their curriculum. And personalised curriculum and a personalised approach, I think, is really, really important and is crucial to develop their love of learning. The Academy has rapidly expanded since opening in 2016, in September 2016. The school opened with 28 students. In September 2017, the school grew to 72 students, then 95 students in September 2018, leading to 140 students over 2 sites in September 2019, and up to 168 students in September 2020 over 3 sites. And the school will be 220 students from September 2021 to include a new 6th form, with budgets growing from 1.2 million to just over 6 million. And staff numbers have grown from 14 in 2016, and there'll be over 160 staff members in 2021. And as I just mentioned earlier, the curriculum approach must be flexible and readily adaptable to meet the needs of our students in our care. So when the school opened in 2016, we had a 5-year plan, and the school network, you were very, very supportive, and we co-constructed that plan with a variety of agents, schools, other trusts, and I thought that was important. So the purpose of the 5-year plan was to provide an ambitious yet achievable plan which supported the mission and the vision of Adventurous Academy, ensuring that it became a centre of expertise and excellence so that all students from all backgrounds achieve more than they ever thought possible through the provision of the highest quality of education. And just to reinforce that point again about our mission statement is where everything's possible, to overcome barriers to social, emotional, mental health and academic development, to deliver an outstanding, inclusive, personalised curriculum through a multidisciplinary approach in order to equip all students with the skills and experiences needed to embrace lifelong learning. The purpose and one of the main reasons for implementing a fully integrated multidisciplinary approach was I was fed up of complaining and moaning that we weren't having help from social care. We weren't having any help from children mental health services. And at times, we were finding it very difficult to implement intervention at the point of need. So as part of our 5-year plan, the aim was to have clearly specialist teachers in our classes, but the aim was to have specialist support staff, pastoral managers, but a full range of multidisciplinary approaches. So for example, to have clinical leads in speech and language, to have clinical leads in occupational therapy, and to have clinical leads in psychotherapy and mental health. Therefore, by co-constructing a multidisciplinary curriculum that met the needs of all our students. And to me, the importance of that as an educationalist, it was okay for me to say, actually, I don't know the answer to meeting the needs for some of our most complex children, but I need to co-construct a curriculum, a personalised curriculum that meets the needs of our children with the expertise of our clinical leads that work purely for our school, that had an in-depth understanding of our community, understanding the needs of all our children, and be able to implement that at the point of need, to me was a very, very important step forward in meeting the needs of our children so we can really overcome those barriers to social, emotional and academic development. We have a deep focus on nurture and understanding what nurture is. We have a range of animals from the therapy dogs, we have chickens in school, things of that nature. We have a variety of theme days. You know, this is an example where we had a day on superheroes, you know, that picture in the middle. And making sure that the staffing ratios are such that all the children's voices are heard, even those, you know, the children who have the most complex of issues, that there's enough staff members to be there to support our colleagues, to explain the learning journey, to work with our children shoulder to shoulder. And I think the importance is that to remind ourselves that education is a relationship-based profession, and that's absolutely crucial. And I'm a big believer that by having positive and trusting relationships with our children and young people, that they can achieve more than they ever thought possible. Again, you know, one of our therapy dogs, this is Ollie, one of our black Labradors, a wonderful, wonderful dog who's helped many, many children for many, many years. And Ollie also wears a school uniform. That was one element that was fed back to us through the school council. Well, surely, Mr. Williams, Ollie needs a school uniform. Yes, absolutely right. So with colleagues in the textiles department, we created a bandana for Ollie, and Ollie proudly wears his bandana as part of his school uniform when he comes to school. And there are certain parts of the school, as you can see, we've got a mural that we completed in a new school that we opened about 5 or 6 weeks ago. You know, again, capturing the voice of our children, capturing the voice of our school community, that they wanted an area where they could immerse themselves in an underwater world, and that's what we created within one of our corridors. So I think it's really, really important, really important that we do make an effort to capture the voice of our children, that we bring learning to life, and that we provide these magical moments in school, you know, and keep on working on those key elements really of developing those positive relationships with our children and our families. So I'm going to come back just a couple of steps. You know, I mentioned our 5-year plan. We're now into our next stage of our 5-year plan. And, you know, we're looking forward from 2020 to 2023, looking forward to 2025 also. That those key strategic priorities, and from a leadership perspective, and I know the writing here is quite small, so I'll just go through each point. That I think is crucial to have your 5-year plans, your 5-year strategies. I think is crucial. You know, school opened in you know, 2016. That's moving us into 2020, you know, 21. But now we're looking to 2025, and what do those strategic priorities look like? Well, clearly we need to keep on improving outcomes for our children and young people. That is one key area of real focus. And by 2025, we need to make sure that all of our mini schools within Adventurous are also deemed to be at least good from an Ofsted perspective. That there is a focus on transition points, so children do make progress, and we can evidence that in reading, writing and maths. And our children at the other significant time, Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5, also achieve outcomes that we feel are aspirational, and I think that's important, alongside developing life skills. The second key area from a strategic perspective that we'll be focusing on is to build a financially sustainable model, because the school has grown rapidly. You know, budget of just over 6 million for over 3 sites. And the school will probably grow to 6 or 7 sites, and to double that in the next 3 to 5 years, based on our current work with local authorities. So to make sure that our financial planning, the curriculum elements are implemented into that, just to make sure that we can maintain the quality as we grow over the next few years. Then point number 3, to make sure that all the services that we provide for all the principals and the heads of school in all our different settings are of a level so the heads of schools and senior colleagues can focus on school improvement, not having to focus on aspects of challenges within finance or challenges within health and safety and all the areas that can at times eat into what senior leaders could and should be focusing on, which is school improvement. We want to continue to be an excellent employer. You know, we keep on using surveys, we keep on using methods of capturing the voice of people that work for the school, And that again is a crucial way of providing feedback on are we meeting the needs not just of our children, but also the professional development needs of all our colleagues in all our schools. Are we giving enough stimulating opportunities for colleagues to develop themselves professionally? Because and I know that by giving appropriate professional development opportunities, that actually outcomes for children will also improve, but it's giving multiple opportunities for colleagues to share that through appraisals, to share that through questionnaires, to have that through coaching opportunities is also really, really important. And then the other key area, we've just become a teaching hub. And within that, we've got the Adventurous Trust Institute of Education, where we've got a training resource in one of our new schools where we have one-way mirrors, so we can observe best practice. We can see how colleagues are working with our children and young people. And having an area to be able to observe without actually having to go into the class actually means that we can see the children in more of that normalized situation. And I'm a big believer that if another adult goes into a class, especially of complex learners, that can change the dynamics at times within the class. So our Adventurous Trust Institute of Education is all about the development of all our staff members. And again, coming back to that point I mentioned earlier about being an excellent employer, providing diverse opportunities for all our staff members to have really exciting professional development opportunities within a multidisciplinary setting. So it's just not education based. It's also around speech and language development, occupational therapy, sensory integration, and also around aspects of mental health and psychotherapy. So our ethical framework, which is this green line around the outside, that our ethical framework is based on capturing stakeholder voice, that we develop ambitious goals, that we embody integrity, and that all the leaders can walk the talk. We're not just stuck in an office. And I know that the COVID challenge, that has been a huge challenge recently about getting around school and clearly not breaking bubbles. But if I can't get into a class by physically being there, can I sometimes be invited into a lesson, making an appearance on the white screen or the whiteboard, immersing myself in the children's lives and the staff members' lives in different ways. Staff communication is important, and that's been a real challenge, especially over the last 12-18 months. How do we keep on communicating openly with staff members across multiple sites? Well, we clearly have to use IT in a different way, and we're constantly asking the question, how can we make communication better? And as part of improving that communication and making it better, it's important, I feel, to always close that feedback loop. That within 24 hours, if I haven't got back to you with a resolution, please ask the question again. Because there's nothing worse than keeping people hanging for answers. And I think that's one weakness in my leadership over time, is that I've had to address myself by making sure that I do close that feedback loop with colleagues. And that coming back to that next section about one goal to non-negotiable, that all children from all backgrounds, no matter what complexities, have a moral right to succeed in our school. And by developing by developing their knowledge, actually we give them skills for life. And by developing skills for life, we give them opportunities to be able to be independent. And that is underpinned by that mantra of working hard and by being kind. And our strategic approach, that we have high expectations of all staff members and our children, that we are values driven, and we are driven by the highest need to have high quality teaching and leadership right across our institutions, and that we want to ignite children's love of learning. We provide a local offer, and that we develop all our staff members to be the best that they can be. I just love this quote by Sir Tim Brickhouse, to say that if the teacher makes the weather, the school creates the climate. School improvement is how schools create an even better climate for the individual and groups of children to do their job in the most favourable of circumstances. So coming back to that previous point about having positive relationships as one of the key drivers to improve outcomes in our children and young people. So what research is showing us, this research from 2016, that Raising the attainment of low performing and complex students, what works? Well, students in the UK are less likely to be low performers if they have supportive teachers whose morale is high. Okay, so as a school leader, I therefore feel that I have a moral duty to make sure that the well-being of all my colleagues is one of the key important elements that means that the children also have a better service. And actually, if that's telling me through research, I really need to take note of that. And as we, I suppose, come out of this particular COVID situation, okay, that we keep on focusing on those 3 R's: restoration into school life, securing relationships, which also includes a parental engagement. And what I keep on asking my colleagues, is it hard to reach parents or hard to reach schools? Quite a few of our parents, currently I think we're about 65% of our children living in deprivation. And through open communication with our parents, actually we find school quite a scary place to be. So how can you make school a more welcoming place for me? And it comes back to that parental engagement, capturing the voice of our parents, I think is crucial. And then responding, the third R, responding to pupil need. Adults making those necessary adjustments within a multidisciplinary setting. And I think this point at the bottom of the slide is really important, that positive, trusting relationships help to establish a developmental pathway that serve as a foundation for lifelong learning and will over time make qualitative changes to a child's genetic makeup. So what research is showing is that through professional and positive relationships, we can change, or we can have an influence on how the neurological pathways develop in a child's brain. And I think that is a really powerful message. But actually, as educators, we need to focus even more on those positive relationships. So another key point to focus on. And every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. I'm also looking at a maturing culture of inclusivity. And what I mean by that is that because I work not just in a special school, but I have the executive responsibility over 6 primary schools, there's a constant challenge of how do we improve inclusive practice right across our mainstream schools. And what we're trying to do is to move at pace towards a system that recognises difference and acknowledges biases, applying pedagogy for all, that we develop a strengths-based dialogue that celebrates difference, and that we expect to be surprised by pupil potential, and that we as educators see all pupils as our responsibility. I think if an education system truly works, that should be based on what that education system is doing for the most complex and for the most vulnerable and the most deprived, and I think that needs to be a key area of focus. That we plan strategically to consider accessibility for everyone, and obviously the purpose of education as social justice through better attainment. That we focus on inclusive teaching and learning, and that the system-wide knowledge and responsibility and expertise actually really does focus on a collective responsibility and ownership of groups of pupils of the most vulnerable and the most complex. And I just think at times some of the rhetoric that we sometimes hear from central government at the moment, we need to have the courage to challenge that. And to me, that the education system should really take into account and have an even further focus on, if we're not meeting the needs of our 20% most vulnerable in society, actually our education system isn't being as successful and is failing at the moment. So we know that schools need to do things slightly differently to cater for the increasing complexity of our young people in today's society. And that anyone who works with or for young people knows that this isn't about funding. What is needed is a fundamental shift in culture. A whole system approach is needed, focusing on the prevention of mental ill health, of early intervention and recovery, We really owe this to our young people, and it is with their future in mind that we must all commit to invest in this challenge. And that was highlighted by Norman Lamb back in 2017. So a key question, just to pause for thought at the minute, that we can see that the medical world has changed enormously in the last 100 years. Got one picture here of an operating theatre 100 years ago, and there's a picture of an operating theatre now. And clearly from just those two pictures, it might be quite a blunt instrument, but we can see that the medical world has changed enormously. So colleagues, what I'm asking now is how much of approaches to education change in the last 100 years? And yes, it might be quite a blunt instrument. We have a classroom, we have children, there might be an interactive board at the front, but actually has education really kept up with the 21st century? And if I come back to this picture, first of all, some recent research by Professor Barry Carpenter was showing that at the moment there are 80,000 children that are born pre-33 weeks in our primary schools in England and Wales. That's on average 4 children in every primary class in the whole of England and Wales. Unfortunately, only 6% of teachers have been taught how to educate children that have been born pre-33 weeks. So what the system is showing us is that through medical science, and rightly so, more children are being kept alive, more children are overcoming complexities through birth and prematurity than ever before. And then we ask the question, why at the age of 7 there's such an increase in exclusions across our school? So seeing that the medical world has moved on, the 21st century has moved on, actually has the pedagogy and actually have our approaches to education changed that much in the last 100 years? So our purpose must be to connect learners as local citizens of today with the ideas, knowledge and skills that they will need as global citizens that they must become. They will engage with the familiar and be engaged in the unusual, be immersed in language and communicate in multiple languages, know how to practice, be resilient and challenged, be proud of the local environment and think on a global scale, win fairly, lose graciously, accept help, give willingly, embrace selflessness, love difference, be different, and stand up for the rights of others just because it's the right thing to do. We want all our students to be relentlessly creative and critically curious and to live ambitiously. And when little people, our children, our young people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it is our job to share our calm and not to join in their chaos. Therefore, clusters of schools working in partnership can create a self-improving school system. And at the heart of the self-improved system is a collective moral purpose, a commitment of all teachers and stakeholders in school to the education of all students in the system as a whole. And again, that is reinforced by Hargreave in 2014. So colleagues, a question: what will be your legacy? And what are you willing to do now to address inequality? I was fortunate enough a few years ago, we were awarded Times Education School of the Year as a special school, and then also the overall special school of the year. And what the Times Education Supplement wrote, which was actually quite humbling of them to write such a positive statement, in their drive to show pupils that anything is possible, staff go to the ends of the earth, literally. So what we have here is a picture of myself with a fellow colleague. We took our children, young people, on an expedition to Svalbard, which is 78 degrees north, living in temperatures of up to -20. That was called The Coldest Classroom on Earth. It was a BBC documentary. The next picture here is a picture of, as well, we undertook the hottest classroom on earth. We had schools right across England and Wales participating. It's going back a good few years now. But again, that was providing opportunity for children to learn outside of the classroom. The following year, we took children to, 200 metres above base camp, you know, the highest from on earth. Again, that was the BBC documentary and a Sky documentary. We've also, back in 2014, 2015, we took children cycling around the Alps. We managed to cover 350 kilometres over a period of about 6-7 days. Back in 2019, this was the last expedition. It was the wettest classroom on earth. We managed to sail a tour ship around the UK with 96 children from 14 different schools. And again, that provided our children and actually our adults different opportunities to engage children in kinesthetic-based opportunities. And what was interesting is, especially with the sailing expedition, is that we found that our children and young people supported our staff members as much as our staff members had to support the children. So that was quite a humbling experience. So we're constantly thinking of creative ways to engage children in meaningful learning, something that can actually change their concepts, their self-belief and a feeling of self-worth, and constantly challenging ourselves on what we can do better and what we can do differently. And then when evaluating these different interventions, there's one key area that I always come back to with my senior colleagues, and I say, please focus on these particular elements. So when evaluating the impact of any project or any expedition or new intervention, we always focus on whether the activity has been successful and in what circumstances. We look for evidence of impact on individual pupil outcomes, not necessarily groups, but on individual pupils. So we put in place a robust framework at the start of the strategy, so we know exactly what we're looking for at the end. We ensure that the evaluation is transparent to all stakeholders, that we report on progress against that framework, and that we judge success based on outcomes, as I said, for individual pupils, not the school as a whole, because it makes a difference to that individual child whether the intervention has worked or not. And we measure success based on outcomes for disadvantaged and our most vulnerable learners. And that evaluation is fundamental to continuous improvement and to keep on building a solid evidence base that will enable plans to impact on pupils and their outcomes. I'm going to share a picture here with you. So colleagues, what do you actually see in that drawing? I suppose if you look upon face on, you might see a frog. However, if you turn that picture sideways, you actually see a horse. And the reason why I'm just using this concept, you know, this particular aspect is I keep on asking my colleagues back in the schools, you know, we keep on looking, need to keep looking with fresh eyes. But we need to keep on looking for interventions that have an impact, that we need to keep on challenging each other through coaching conversations that actually does make a real difference to this one child if we can show that this intervention works. And we need to think differently, that just because 10 things haven't worked previously, well, we need to keep on thinking, because this might be the intervention that can unlock that moment of magic in that child's life. And there's nothing more humbling, you know, recently seeing some children who are deemed to be non-verbal finding their voice through singing or saying their first words, you know, that to me is really, really humbling. And that by looking with fresh eyes, that we do meet the needs of our most vulnerable, and that remains a key priority in any successful education strategy. All our staff members therefore need to have a greater knowledge base through continuous learning, and by that they can use their experiences in school to influence outcomes. That we develop staff members who are empathetic and maintain positivity through the most challenging of times, and clearly that needs to be modelled and led by senior leaders. Our staff members remain curious, they can be creative, that we empower them to try different elements around intervention. That we employ and that we keep staff members that are courageous with determinism and passion to meet the needs of all our children, that we have energy and that we maintain a sense of humour even through the most challenging of times, because actually laughter and seeing the funny side of things, again, I think is infectious, and that we as adults remain solution focused in all our approaches, and that we as adults can empower our staff members to affect change, that we trust them, and in return they can deliver better for our children and young people. And I'm a big believer that in turn, if we become financially viable, that we can have high aspirations, and in turn we can deliver life transforming results for our young people. So that is my PowerPoint for today. I think I've covered quite a lot of areas. I was given a timeline of about 40 minutes. I've covered it in 36 minutes. So at this point, I would like to be able, Alex, to open the floor to questions from people that have been listening to me for the last 38 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So please do feel free, everyone, to turn your cameras on now, and we can turn this into a bit more of an open conversation if you wish. I think we've just had a question come into the chat from Penny. If you would like to ask that directly, Penny, please do go ahead.
Okay, Penny, I wonder if you could expand on your multidisciplinary clinical approach. Do you employ clinicians directly, or are they externally employed supervisors? Penny, thank you for that one. Actually, it's a mixture. In our first year, we employed directly speech and language therapists who were on contract with us. But what we found is that actually even one or two speech and language therapists didn't have the expertise to meet the needs of all our children and young people. What we then did is that we went out and through quite a rigorous selection process, looked at speech and language companies, larger companies that had expertise, that had up to 25 speech and language therapists. So for example, you know, if a child had real complex needs in one particular area that was non-verbal and was from a particular cultural background, you know, we could actually deploy a specialist to work in that particular area. So by having a pool of therapists, actually, it provided a broader range, but also greater specialism for us to be able to dip into that. The only multidisciplinary people that we employ directly on contract now are our occupational therapists. So across, we've got altogether there must be about, I think we've got 14 speech and language therapists across the trust. 7 of those are based in a special school. And you know, we give them performance management targets exactly the same as we give our support staff. But the buy-in to me is that they all buy into the values and the culture of the school. What we also have, Penny, is that we have a multidisciplinary team meeting on a weekly basis, where we have our medical officer with our clinical leads in speech and language, OT, and mental health. And all our mental health workers have got a minimum of a master's degree. Not the qualifications are important, but I think from a clinical perspective, it gives that level of integrity to the work that the colleagues do. And we have a multidisciplinary meeting where they look at some of the most complex cases in school, where the staff members might say, actually, I'm not sure what to do with this child or young person anymore. So there's a fully integrated multidisciplinary meeting with outcomes agreed then with the teachers and with the support staff. What colleagues then do from the multidisciplinary team is clearly they go into class and they model with colleagues and co-construct what needs to happen in class. And I'm more than happy, Alex, we've got our multidisciplinary manual that I can share with all colleagues, and that isn't just what we do with the special school, because the special school clearly we've got more adults there, but it's actually how that MDT model is used and utilised right across our primary schools and secondary schools as well. And I'm more than happy to share that MDT manual. Sounds awful, doesn't it? A manual, it almost sounds like a book in a car, but that's what it's called at the moment. And that goes into the detail about that multidisciplinary model. And again, it's based on a universal offer, which is all the children get this, a targeted and specialist offer. So wave 1, 2 and 3, and that's how we've built our multidisciplinary model. I hope any of that answers your question on that. Okay.
Thanks, Trystan. That was really useful. I'm sure the manual will be received gratefully by those attending as well. Is there anybody else here who has a question? I've just seen one pop in from Hannah. So as the only special school in the trust, what does the relationship between Adventurous and the other trust schools look like? And how has the free school built links with other schools within the special educational needs sector?
We've actually, the special school now is co-located with one primary and one secondary in the south part of the city, and in the central part of the city another a special school site is co-located with a primary school. And what we find is that the expertise from the special school, actually in terms of those inclusive practices, having a real impact on the practice within our mainstream schools, actually about understanding adverse childhood experiences, having more of an integrated working practice where conflict resolution becomes the first approach rather than sanction, discipline and exclusion. And by having the schools co-located also, it means that some children with support are also educated within the mainstream sector. It also means that some of the children who are going through the education healthcare plan process can also have access to specialist schooling as well. And professional development across the trust also means that colleagues in special school and primary are co-constructing these CPD opportunities. There is a danger that the free school actually doesn't get sidetracked within a trust that is predominantly mainstream. However, as a person that's come up through the special school system, I've got the exec responsibility, and I make sure that the special school certainly doesn't get pushed aside, and that the voice of the special school is certainly heard. So I think that some of the working practices that are happening in special school are really cutting edge, and having the mentality about being solution focused is something that's really opened the eyes of some of our colleagues within the mainstream setting about forgiveness, about revisiting what you could do, and actually is that you as an adult need to adjust what you do to meet the needs of the children in front of you, not necessarily the other way around. Hopefully, Hannah, that answers that. I'm just having a look at Penny's question. Do we have NHS clinical providers? Penny, no, we don't. We just felt, Penny, that with the NHS providers coming in, they couldn't provide the continuity that we needed in our school. So what we did was that we agreed with the local authority that our multidisciplinary approach wouldn't include NHS providers. So we set up our own financial matrix. So when children came into the school, that we had a banding system that met the needs of our children, and that the NHS time then was put back into the other maintained special schools and into the other schools within the city, because obviously the NHS were stretched, and we just felt that morally that was the right thing to do. So when we opened as a free school, with the full support of the DFE, we told the local authority what our costs were, not the local authority telling us what our costs should be. And I think that has become quite powerful, really, to be able to negotiate actually before children and young people come to school what the costs should be, because by providing those costs we can provide a truly inclusive multidisciplinary approach that can meet the needs of our children. And the guarantee then in return is that we won't exclude the children. That's the kind of the guarantee that we provide. into that. So it's taking responsibility really, and sticking by your motto and your mantra of where everything's possible.
That actually links really nicely, Trystan, to a question that I had as well from earlier, when you were talking and saying that the school has rapidly expanded in the last 5 years, so your pupil numbers have risen quite quickly. It sounds like you have a good relationship with the local authority now and have managed to negotiate that funding and how it works with the school. Has the relationship always been strong? And if so, how did you develop that relationship with the local authority to ensure that your expansion was sustainable and catering for children of the correct need?
Yeah, I think, Alex, maintaining positive relationships with all your external providers is important. I would rather be seen as a person that's easy to work with, even though, you know, I feel I'm answerable to the needs of my community and the needs of my children first and foremost, and I do remind local authority and even my governors of that. Okay, the needs of my community and my children and the staff members I serve are my key priorities, and but working with a local authority, it's better to be on good terms with everybody than not to be on good terms. Yes, we have professional disagreements, but I come back to that ethical point of, I'm disagreeing with you because I don't feel you're being ethical in meeting the needs of these children. And I think, by maintaining that ethical stance, at times I get local authorities to agree with me. However, in terms of expansion, Alex, it's been really important to have a deep understanding of what the local authority strategy is. And we've worked very closely with the local authority for them actually to sharpen their strategy around SEN development in the city. And also we're working with the Regional Schools Commissioner and keeping the Regional Schools Commissioner and her team fully informed on what the local authority is saying, what we're trying to achieve as an academy, but also by keeping the Regional Schools Commissioner informed, it means that all key partners are involved in that transformational model, that there are no surprises, that everything is on the table. This is our strategy. This is what we're aiming to achieve. And I do know that working with the local authority here in Bristol, we'll probably keep on expanding, probably at the same rate as we have done for the next 3 to 5 years. So for the 54 additional places that we've had this year, we had over 300 consultations, and all those children had a primary diagnosis of autism, and all those children needed to move into a multidisciplinary setting to meet their needs. And the moral obligation is that we had to work through those and actually to make sure that we provided specialist support for the 54 most complex young people. And that was my ethical dilemma. I said, I wish I could meet the needs of the 300 plus children. But obviously, the next stage we'll probably grow another 50, 60 children, places again in time. But, and that has been the greatest challenge with the local authority now, is to agree on what we feel are the 54 most needed places for those children out of the 300 plus. And that's brought challenges. But again, Alex, coming back to my previous point, is ethically, I feel that I'm doing the right thing, and I always come back to that point,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sticking on the same topic, if you don't mind, just for a second, you did mention that you are now operating across multiple sites,
yeah,
and that you plan to open a sixth form this year as well.
yes.
How do you manage that, essentially, with the school being in so many different places?
Yeah, and I think for colleagues working in special schools, and I suppose it comes back to my time really, and my values as a person. My sister's got special needs, and she had to travel many miles in a car. She doesn't like traveling in a car because she feels quite confined. And when we opened initially, there were some children having to travel 45 minutes across the city to even access the school. So we thought, well, actually, I don't think it's right that a child in early years spends so much time in a car. And then we came up with a concept, well, we need to open multiple sites across the city, because just because a child has got special needs, why do they have to be educated outside of their own community to be able to access specialist provision? And I know that's a dream that I'll probably never fulfill in time. But what we do feel is by having multiple sites across the city, it does really reduce travelling time for those children and young people. The biggest challenge, though, has been maintaining really an appropriate leadership structure to make sure that, accountability, the same provision exists on all the sites. And yeah, that's been one of the greatest elements. And staff members, saying, "Oh, we haven't seen you for 2 weeks. Where have you been?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to juggle 9 sites if you include the primary schools as well." But that's where, by moving from being, I suppose, a principal into an exec role, and by having then dedicated head of school on each site. So what we've created, Alex, is mini schools even within the special school as well. So we have heads of school who have got accountability on those sites. And again, I'm more than happy to share the leadership structure of our trust and how the leadership structure has evolved from 1 school into 3 sites. And obviously, as of September, from age 4 up to 19. And obviously the next stage is that I've already got parents asking me, "You are going to increase the age range up to 25, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, we probably will." So that is going to be the next stage of the evolution on top of the increase in numbers. And, as part of the free school experience, if it wasn't for the parents back in 2014, 2015, raising a concern or a challenge to the local authority and to one of the multi-academy trusts, the free school wouldn't have opened in the first place. And these parents are still in school saying, "We were part of this journey even before you came here, Trystan. Yeah, I get your point. So what do you want me to do next?" Well, let's work together on the next stage of the plan. And why are they doing this? It's because they want the best for their children. And actually, there's nothing wrong in that. So they said, "Okay, we've opened a secondary, we've opened a 6th form, and we're going to be open up to 25. And the other one they've asked for is that, can you open residential as well?" And we've gone, why not? Because a lot of these young people won't be able, even with the best intervention and all the best desires in the world, won't be able to be fully independent. So again, those are in our long-term plans as well, residential and post-16, to meet the needs of our, well, young adults, not young people anymore. So yeah.
That is so interesting. I mean, we'll definitely be keeping in touch with you as you go on that journey, Trystan. I think we've seen quite a few free schools and local authorities well expressing an interest in how to set up that 19 to 25 provision. So I will definitely be watching that space with you guys too. Just having a look at the time, I think we've got time for maybe one more question before we do end today. So rather than asking that myself, I just want to again open it back up to the floor just for a couple of seconds and seeing if anyone does have any final question that they would like to ask to Trystan while we have him.
And hopefully, Alex, if the whole COVID situation doesn't get worse or deteriorate, I'd be more than happy to formalise links with colleagues, even if we have to maintain links through Zoom or Teams or peer-to-peer stuff. We're really keen on that. We're really keen to learn also from colleagues on what they're doing as well. So I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. Penny, do we have a formal curriculum? Yeah, we do have a curiosity curriculum. That's what we call it. So we do have a framework that probably meets the needs of about 60 or 70% of our children. We do have 3 pathways. We have a life skills pathway for our most complex young people. We have a vocational pathway, which again is very kinesthetic, hands-on based. And we also have an academic pathway for some of our high-functioning Asperger children. But each child does have a slightly different personalised plan, which is built in their one-sided A4 All About Me document. So all the children do have a slightly different curriculum. And I think, we wouldn't truly be able to meet the needs of our children unless we had that kind of process in place. So yeah, the formal curriculum is called the Curiosity curriculum. That is based around maths, English, science, and the foundation subjects, based into 3 pathways: life skills, vocational, and academic. But every child has a slightly different variation on their personalised plan, which comes back to my point about adaptability and meeting the needs of all the children and young people. And again, I'm more than happy to share our curriculum outline with you. To SEMH schools within our 7 schools of trust resource ASE. Yeah, I spent time in SEMH and residential, and yeah, you know, so Deborah, real parallels, be great. Thank you. Great to meet new people, even if it's virtually today. You know, gone are the times I used to travel down to London or go to conferences and meet people and stuff of that nature. It's great to be connecting with people here today.
Oh, it absolutely is. And thanks so much, Trystan, and for your offer to connect with people as well. We will definitely be in touch with those who have been here today about whether they would like to connect and the resources that we can share as well. So just going to start us wrapping up. So we're going to now post a quick poll into Zoom here for a little bit of feedback. So I'd appreciate if you could take a second, those who are attending, just to choose your response for the questions there. I do just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's been a really interesting discussion, and a huge thanks to Trystan for such a brilliant presentation and for sticking around to answer all our questions and offer up resources as well. So we will aim to get the slides out to you soon with a link to the presentation and other resources that Trystan has offered. If you do have any further questions or you'd like to link up, please do let us know in the chat or at events@newschoolsnetwork.org, and we'll send them over to you. So thank you very much everyone for joining us. Thank you, Trystan, and I hope you all have a lovely afternoon.
Great. And Alex, please feel free to share my email address with people so they can make contact with me directly. No problem with that at all.
I will do. Thank you so much for that. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.